Well, it's a great pleasure and honor to be able to close out Multichain Day and give the last talk of the day. One of the key things that has been happening over the course of this conference is we've seen a lot of different projects talking about their different challenges and talking about technical challenges or looking to raise capital or bring in new users. And I think there's sort of a um, inability frequently to speak plainly and honestly about where things are. The reality is, and I think everyone from an investor to an entrepreneur to builders in the space are probably experiencing something very similar. We have a crisis of confidence that has been going on for a long time, for at least a couple of years, and certainly over the course of the last year has been particularly severe in our industry. Multichain Day is being held right next to EthCC. And EthCC and Ethereum itself has been sort of the epicenter of this crisis of confidence. People were expecting alt season. People were expecting substantial gains. And instead, what we have is a situation where the investor class have stopped. Many crypto VCs are no longer investing. What they are doing is they've effectively turned themselves into shops, purchasing, buying, and warehousing OTC. In other words, buying at discounts that aren't available to the typical public. The exchanges have started becoming extremely extractive in terms of the projects that they're willing to list. The projects that are listing on the exchanges are very frequently listing in ways which are disappointing. And seeing their value erode. And ultimately, what this leads to is the people who have been supporting this entire industry and all of these sets of investors have also been going through a crisis of confidence. And they are making fewer investments, are demonstrating less excitement, and have become far more cynical and wary of the entire industry. And what is driving this is that we have some fundamental problems that we haven't properly dealt with. I think the last few years have been an orgy of experimentation and innovation, primarily driven in a single direction, which is, can I launch a new chain? Because every single new chain that launched was able to launch its own token and trade at a significant premium, and it seemed like easy money. And there were such great examples out there. Maybe we can be the next Ethereum, maybe we can be the next Solana. Fundamentally, though, that never really made sense. And it didn't make sense because of one very simple but highly important aspect of our industry. It's very difficult to make predictions about the future. But sometimes there are opportunities where what the future should look like should be obvious to everyone. For example, one of the things that we've seen over the last 50 years play out again and again and again is the importance in technology of network effects. And our industry is an industry dominated by network effects. Money has a network effect. Liquidity has a network effect. Applications and ecosystems of applications have network effects. But perhaps most importantly, every single chain itself is literally a network of nodes, a network of validators, a network of miners. We should have anticipated that network effects would dominate our industry. And when network effects dominate your industry, you can expect to have winner takes most. Winner takes most mechanics. That's the pattern that we've seen with network effects. But there's another pattern, which also we've seen again and again in the last 150 years of technological innovation and business coming together. And that is that every time you get a significant new technology, a platform type technology, be it electricity or the car or the telephone or television or airplanes or the internet, what we've always seen is industries go through a period of massive explosion, a Cambrian explosion of many, 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 many players entering into the space. That then saturates and peaks. And then what we see is a period of consolidation. These are almost iron laws. And they should allow us to help us navigate ourselves in terms of where we should be investing, where as builders we should be building, and where we can generate value for users, for the ecosystem, for the industry that we're building in. And yet, for the most part, we have ignored these two very obvious components, right? That we were going to see a massive search across the entire search space, and then a consolidation, and that this consolidation would be driven by network effects. And here we are at Multichain Day. And I think at the same time that we're at Multichain Day, what we are seeing with this crisis of confidence is that perhaps we should have not been expecting so many chains in the first place. Because what we're seeing out there is absolute dominance by Bitcoin from an assets perspective, from an integrations with traditional financial world perspective, from the perspective of brand. That network has, from day zero until today, managed to maintain its top spot as the primary network. But Bitcoin has been very, very special in that sort of special in the way that the classroom for special kids is special. Bitcoin has been extremely limited in what it is able to do. It has had limitations around scale, and it has had limitations around programmability. And so what we've seen is again and again many different projects, chains, networks coming and competing on the basis of being able to do that which Bitcoin cannot do. And so, if there was a reason to believe that these network effects perhaps would not hold in the case of our industry, it was because of the limitations of Bitcoin rather than the features or innovations that other projects were building. It was specifically Bitcoin's inability to accept that, to replicate those innovations. So this has been sort of the guiding principle with which I have been building in this space now for close to 14 years. My sense has been that the primary limiter for our industry as a whole has been the limitations on Bitcoin. The limitations on Bitcoin not only limited what BTC could do or what the Bitcoin network could do, not only limited Bitcoin's ability to be a general purpose ledger for the world, but also limited significantly all of the other developments that we were seeing in crypto, all of these applications that we were building, all of the fragmentation that we were seeing, all of sort of the lack of this industry being able to galvanize into something beyond a casino were driven by the fact that the very heart of the network, the very core of the network, had been effectively detached from all of this and extremely limited in itself. And so I believed, and I was probably the minority here, but certainly not the only one, that the holy grail was going to be to remove the cap that our entire industry suffered under by removing the limitations that existed for Bitcoin. And so that has been for me my personal sort of mission for the last 14 years is working on that. And I did it first by trying to provide a deeper integration for Bitcoin into the existing financial rails. Did that through one of the first companies to do significant remittance and cross-border transactions through Bitcoin, which I founded, called Epiphyte. Then I helped create what became the leading DeFi platform for Bitcoin. But for the last 5 years, my focus has been around how can we bring to Bitcoin the full capacity of programmability and scalability. And I think, to the credit of myself and the people who are working with me, we early on recognized that the way that this could be accomplished was through this other big buzzword that we now have over the course of the last year, which is ZK technology, right? The ability to perform programmability, perform computation off-chain, and then secure it, validate it, and execute it on-chain using only these tiny little zero-knowledge proofs. And so for the last 5 years, that is what we've been working on. A year ago, as part of the BitcoinOS project, we were able to demonstrate for the first time ever in block 853626 the verification of ZK on Bitcoin. Then, just a few weeks ago, the culmination of a year's work since then, we managed to demonstrate the ability to bring general purpose programmable tokens and general purpose smart contracts to Bitcoin mainnet, and to do something which even we hadn't anticipated at the beginning of the project, which was the ability to also allow for these assets and smart contracts to interact with other chains without bridges, simply the user themselves being able to write transactions. And so creating a new way of thinking about tokens that can exist on Bitcoin, but can also move without bridges, bridgeless bridging, or what we call porting from one chain to another. And so our goal has morphed from becoming more than just sort of taking the lid off what Bitcoin can do to allowing the rest of this massive infrastructure and ecosystem that we have built out to integrate with Bitcoin. And I think, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I've been allowed to be the last speaker at Multichain Day, but I have a thesis for Multichain going forward and for Multichain Day. And I think that my thesis is that if you want to be able to integrate Ethereum with Solana, Sway with Cardano, Tron with anything, right? You can't simply do it by building a new adapter, right? Another set of bridges or another federation, which is going to allow you to transact between these things. Then you're multiplying the risks that you have now. You need to trust Tron, you need to trust Sway, you need to trust what sits in between them. And so what we're going to need is a base layer of security for our entire industry, which will allow these different chains, these different applications to interact with each other, even forgetting Bitcoin. And there is one single network which has sort of the neutrality, the trust, the size, and the security to be able to provide for that role. And that is, I think, quite obviously Bitcoin. But perhaps more importantly, only Bitcoin has the network effects to do it. And so while my journey over the last few years has primarily been focused on being able to provide for programmability and scalability to Bitcoin, I think that over the last year, what I've been discovering is that the technology that we're building may find its greatest role in integrating the rest of crypto with each other, with itself, and turning crypto finally into a single cohesive industry rather than a fragmented set of islands which cannot talk to each other, and where if you want to move assets from one to the other, you need to be very careful of North Korean pirates. So, to sum up, and perhaps to sum up, from my perspective, Multichain Day, I actually think despite the crisis of confidence that we have, we are living through extremely exciting times. The combination of ZK, the removal of limitations from Bitcoin, the fact that Bitcoin and by extension all of crypto have become accepted parts of the traditional financial world, all of these things are coming together now. And consolidation is not and should not be a scary word. It means that we can finally consolidate our industry into what we've always said it would be, which is a unified internet of value. And I think the missing piece has been Bitcoin. And I'm glad that through Boss, we're able to play the role of providing the technology to finally make that part of the story possible. Thank you very much.